It is 6 p.m., August 13th, 2018. We will begin the special board meeting of the Othello School District Board of Directors with the flag salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so this special board meeting is specifically for a budget hearing. The agenda is shortened, but the bulk of the agenda is under development and linkage. This will give the board an opportunity to ask questions regarding the budget. It also will give us time for public comment at that time as well. We will not be taking action in this meeting on the budget. It will be in the regular board meeting that immediately follows. It will be in that agenda. So first of all, I want to welcome the guests that we have today. And is there any, I don't think there's any need for translation. Okay. And item A3, I'll accept a motion for approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Been a motion by Director Stevenson to approve.
I'll second it.
Second by Director Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. So we'll move right into item B1, budget hearing and public comment. I don't believe we have any requests for public comment, but because this is a big section for that too, if someone at some time, if the public wants to ask a question or make a comment, I'm okay with allowing that if the rest of the board is. This is our first, I think this is the first time we've actually had a true budget hearing. Second time? Did we do it last year? Okay. So if the board has questions, then let's go ahead and get right into that. Becky, you can come on up in preparation.
I have a question or two. So in looking back on the 120-page document, I know that this is much more concise. Thank you. It talks about investment earnings. Can you tell me what would investment earnings be for the school district?
The investment
Oh,
earnings.
you're not on. There's a button on the back, and you just have to hold it down. Yeah, right there.
How's that?
Not sure. There we go.
So the investment earnings are based off of the operating reserve that's available at the end of every month. So the money is invested, and then the county treasurer, as your official banker, invests those dollars, and then it generates interest income. So your operating reserve that you have, like your 10% minimum balance, that's generating interest. It's not just sitting in a bank account.
Okay.
Okay.
Like 1%, a 0.5%? Do you even a ballpark? I'm not looking for specifics.
It depends on. It's usually
amount.
lately. It's like 0.5 to 1%.
Okay.
It's usually in the state investment pool. It depends on how aggressive the county treasurer is in how they approach investing public money. Each county is a little bit different.
Okay, so that depends on the treasurer for the county.
Yeah, because
Okay.
they, as the official banker for the school district, you don't have the authority to take and say, we want to put the money in bonds or we want to put it in the stock market. The county treasurer has the authority to do that for you.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I'm not sure if you're going to, you probably know this because I know you know all these things ins and outs. There was something that had committed to other purposes under GL 870.
So you have a commitment to one-on-one Chromebooks.
Okay.
And you, I believe you had like a $750,000 initial commitment. And as that commitment is spent down, then the amount in that GL is decreased as you spend that commitment. Now, in the future budget forecasts, I put $320,000 a year in that committed GL to help you sustain the spending for that program. So it clearly identifies those dollars. Now, as prices increase, you may want to, at some point, increase that dollar amount. But the basis of it was $800 at $400. It was just kind of a round guesstimate.
Okay.
Okay? And I wanted to clarify the other
Yes.
day, you asked me the question about local revenue
Mhm.
and that it had gone down. And one of the things that I overlooked telling you was that next year the district is going to the full all students, no pricing lunch program.
Yes.
And so the dollars that you would have collected from students for meal purchases were eliminated from that category, and that was around 200,000.
Okay, so
So
that
that was-
changed fairly dramatically.
Yeah,
partially
that was
because
a
of that as
major
well.
portion of that,
Okay, that
Okay.
makes sense.
and that was my oversight.
Since you brought that up, parents that have a balance in that, when that takes into effect, what's going to happen there?
So I'm not up close and personal with your accounting system, but I'm sure that every student who has a balance on their account is easily identified. So either refunds will be made or money can be left on account. Sometimes students will buy extra milk or an a la carte item. And so having some money available is always of benefit to the kids too. But there is an accounting for every student's balance.
Is that what you're asking, Tony, about
Yeah.
credit, or so I'm curious
Either
about,
way, a credit or a refund. I think you kind of answered it.
it would, I kind of have the same question about when there is money owing. I'm assuming that's up to us, the district, if we collect any previous monies owing.
Yep. And it kind of boils down to district policy for how you want to collect money from families.
I'd be curious to know, Chris, overall where we're at. Maybe some of the parents that have extra money in there would be willing to donate to some of them that couldn't, that are in arrears or something. I don't know. I don't have any idea if we're net negative or net positive in that number.
Usually at the end of every school year, there's an attempt to bring accounts current. And sometimes if there's a hardship, the district will address that on an individual basis.
So I have a question regarding the capital funds project, or capital funds budget. And I understand the capital funds revenues projected for this coming year.
Mhm.
It was based on the K-3 class size reduction, right? But I see there's even bigger monies budgeted for future years. Can you explain that to me?
Sure. So what I did is, this was the first year that,
Wait, can you say what page we're on for that question? Okay, thank you.
can you go to 22? So what happened here is you don't have a mechanism right now in place for addressing your facility needs. You have no source of revenue. So in the four-year forecast, I built in the opportunity that if you were to seek a capital bond, a voted bond, or a potential capital levy that would help you address some of the facility needs for your district. And I know that you have a consultant that you're working with, and all of these options will be part of that. But in the four-year forecast, what I did is I tried to build in the opportunity for you to see or know that you have some facility needs that need to be met. And so the revenue stream for that would most likely be a capital levy or dollars from the general fund. And so that, it's just a projection, it's at your discretion on how you either want to approach it or not approach it. Again, it's just a forecast.
So they're all hypotheticals,
Correct.
but the one that's a more firm
Is the current
hypothetical
year.
is the current year, because we
Yes.
know we have
Mhm.
potential access to
Yes.
some funds. Okay.
But I met with your facilities supervisor, and you have some significant unmet facility needs that if you, with good planning out of general fund, you can probably accommodate the repairs and the maintenance that are needed. But every dollar that you take for a major facility needs is dollars away from program. The opportunity for a capital levy, in my opinion, is a wonderful opportunity. If you run a capital levy and you have your committee from the community provide input and they become part of the process as stakeholders, it is the most efficient, best use of money from a taxpayer's point of view that, in my opinion, for facility needs, because you're not selling bonds, and every dollar, as long as you don't do non-voted debt, every dollar that you collect, you put directly into the facility. And it's just, to me, it's just a great way to maintain the facilities in a manner that they should be maintained.
Thank you.
It's just my opinion.
So with that opinion, what would you say is like a cap for the maximum amount that should, and always hypothetical and totally your opinion, what is the max amount that should be requested under a levy as opposed to going to a bond?
I wouldn't say that there's a maximum amount. Everything that you can do with a bond, you can do with a levy.
Right.
The dollars are equally accessible for those projects. It's really kind of based on your community and how you feel that what the community will support and what you need. So I'm never an advocate of asking for money just to ask for it. I believe that if you go to the taxpayers in a purposeful manner with a true need, they normally will accommodate that or react positively. So when you have your committee and you sit and you identify your facility needs, you're going to know what that dollar amount's going to look like. And it can be over a series of years. So as you build your long-range facility plan or your maintenance plan, then you can accommodate knowing how much money you need and what that looks like in a levy and a tax rate.
I wanted to say thank you for page 8 because I wrote down those questions. What is that? What is that? What is that? When I was on page 4 and then I got to page 8, went, oh, tells me right there. Maybe it wasn't page 8. Maybe it's page 13. I'm sorry. I got you past it. Although page 8 was beneficial as well. Because you kept referring to your TVF, and I was like, I don't know what TVF is.
Okay.
And I don't know what the debt service fund is. So this was wonderful to be able to understand and to see the bond that is still outstanding, to see that in plain English. Yes. So.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Clarifying that, though, it wasn't voted on in 2014. I believe that was when we refinanced it. It was really the 2007 bond, correct, Tony?
Correct.
Refinanced in
I don't know what year
2014.
it was, but we refinanced it in 14 to save interest costs.
The schedule that I seen had a 2014 date, so.
Yeah, no, I can see where
stand
you
with it.
we get that from.
Refinance it all.
I just want to clarify that
Sure.
for the community that might say, I don't remember voting on a bond in 2014.
Yeah, it was a significant savings.
Close
Yeah.
to $2 million.
Right around 2 million.
Any other questions from the board?
I did have a couple.
Yeah.
One of them I had, you addressed already, was the capital. The roughly 2.2 million is a grant from the state for
K3
Three.
class
Three,
size
K3.
reduction. Mhm.
classroom reduction. Now, is that expansion, addition of classrooms? Exactly what was the criteria of the grant on that?
So the grant is provided to establish classrooms for grades K through 3. It can be either additional space or it can be remodel. It's to make the space appropriate for that grade level. Once you establish those classrooms, they have to remain K3 for 5 years. And that's really the criteria for using the money.
Okay.
Now, I had been told at one point, if you don't use it, you lose it. Is there a time frame on that grant? Do you know?
So the grant is available. It was awarded. It actually had an expiration date, but we called and checked, and it's still sitting there waiting for Othello to use it. I, again, would caution to leave it there too long. Then the state would maybe view that you really didn't need it. But at this point, it's not going to expire.
So you remember the plan for that was that would just part of what would help pay for the facilities and the bond that we ran in February. So it was going to be used in that, kind of in that pot of money.
Okay. And like I said, for the other numbers in the future, I think we'll really be addressing that as we look into our next meeting on the creation of a plan committee to put together to look at the future needs of the facilities. The next questions I have is regarding pre-K. Is that funded through the general fund?
It is. But there is also a component of Title I that is allowed as a preschool component. So it's based on how the grant is structured. And so Title I does support pre-K.
Okay.
So you have dollars available
I
there.
went through to try to find out specific breakdowns of it.
Yeah.
And I could only find the employees, but I could not find out exactly what that program was costing us.
I can't tell you that off the top of my head. It's around 160,000 that, actually it's more than that. I would have to check with Amy just to be double check. I don't want to give you bad information. But it definitely is a district-supported program.
Okay.
And again, there can be several sources of revenue to support that.
Are we going to need to, this may be a question for Dr. Hurst. I'm a big supporter of that program. I've seen the great results we had with this year's. Are we going to need to look at additional revenue streams for that program in the future to help maintain it?
I would
Or is
say,
our current budget going to be able to sustain it?
I think our current budget is able to sustain. Is that correct, Becky?
It is. And the other part of it is truly as you do your program planning, David and I had a discussion about purposeful planning for programs. And the preschool program, as it expands, will cost more money. But again, you've got some good sources of federal money to support that program in addition to the basic ed dollars.
I know a few months back there was some discussion on creating a 501(c)(3) for that. Is that still in progress or still being looked at?
Absolutely. So I've had the opportunity to meet with our incoming business manager, Lisa Pierce. So I've made her aware of our direction that we're headed in. So she's actually going to be taking over that piece, looking to the 501(c)(3). So we're moving forward with that, absolutely.
And is the intent for that the Early Learning Academy? What are you calling that? It's not Baby College because I know that that's a trademarked name.
Yeah, the Learn Academy.
Yes.
But really, we're looking beyond the Learn Academy. We're looking for the entire vision. So whatever we can't fund through our regular funding sources, we're looking at the 501c3 and donations. But again, that will be separate from the
Right.
district. But
Right.
absolutely.
Okay.
Right now, we do have 501c3 status for up to $50,000, but it's specifically for the Learn Academy. But we're looking to really expand that past $1 million for our 501c3, so it really can apply for our entire vision.
Great.
Any other questions?
Can you go to page 25, please? For the Transportation Vehicle Fund, this year you put out expenditures of 400,000, and then in the forecast, next year, 0. And then the following year, another 400,000, and then 0. That just looks odd. Can you explain that?
So again, as Lisa comes on board, what the plan is that the state replacement schedule provides the dollars to buy your school buses. So as your buses, and the old term is depreciation. So what happens is the state bids school buses every year, and that becomes the replacement cost. And so as you buy a new bus, the state allocates money to you over a certain number of years based on the size of the bus to replace that bus. So on your schedule, you have enough buses on your schedule to sustain the cost of buying new buses. And so in my world, I view that as buying buses every other year. It builds up that depreciation replacement schedule to keep the money coming in so that you never have to look at a different source of revenue for buying a bus. Okay. You can plan to buy a bus every year and make that $200,000 a year or whatever the depreciation schedule will sustain. But sometimes it's just nice to get on a rotation so that you're not constantly bidding and having to do the paperwork to buy buses.
So is it about $200,000 to buy a bus?
Depends on the options.
On the bid, right?
But,
Okay.
but yes, they can be very expensive.
Okay.
Multiple DVD players come down from the ceiling. Those are kind of
One for
costly.
each student,
Yeah.
right?
The
right.
part I love is the white roof to reflect the sun.
Expensive option, I guess.
That's an
huh?
option, yes.
Headphones for everyone, so no one's interrupting. Right.
Yes.
All right. Sounds like the board questions have been answered.
I got one more.
Go
since
for
we're
it.
looking at it.
All right.
The ending fund balances, revenue stream to total expenditures,
What page are you on?
21. In the past, they've been pretty close. And I noticed this year, we're actually going to have it's showing a little over a 1.1 million
Correct.
more
Mm-hmm.
in revenues. But then in the forecast, you got them forecasted out pretty evenly within a few $100,000. What's the
The
big
thought,
increase for this year?
okay, the thought process is it's a conservative budget estimate, allowing to build up the operating reserve so that if you do need to use some money for facility improvement, it will be available in the operating reserve. That was the total intent. You had indicated that the district needed to plan for that. And so that was why I pulled back on some of the program dollars.
Well, to clarify, that would just my personal feeling, the board hasn't made for the public and for the recording, the board hasn't made a comment about whether or not they agree with that, but I understand why you did
it is a logical step. And so, again, as Lisa comes on board, and you may revisit this budget, there's always an opportunity, if it's been under budgeted, to do a revision and add dollars to program.
The budget estimates outside of this coming year, there's nothing, those will change every year.
They
We're
will.
not, that's not set where we're approving anything other than the upcoming year, correct?
Correct.
This is just a forecast, that's it.
Correct.
Could
This
you-
is the first year the legislature required the 4-year forecast.
Okay.
And so it is part of your budget document. The projections for the next 3 years are, for expenditures and revenues, are really just a percentage. And again, we don't know what the funding's gonna be, and we don't know what some of the spending requirements will be. So that's, again, it's just a projection.
It would be hard enough for someone who knows their income to be able to set up a 3-year budget, let alone when the legislature drives it and makes their decisions every year. It
Correct.
could change, so it's a little bit silly, but I
And there-
understand that was a requirement.
And there's a great tool for forecasting. There's a book. Excuse me. But we
So-
went with this.
Could you just, and I think for us as a board, for me personally, just help us understand, in one of our policies that's, has been revised for the board to consider tonight, we used to call it undesignated, unreserved fund, undesignated and unreserved reserve, I guess. And I'm recommending the change of name to now I just lost it. It's a verbiage that you use.
So there's, excuse me, so there's the undesignated fund, unassigned fund balance.
Can you help me understand what we have in this district that's considered assigned, so that then we have a good understanding about then what the unassigned is when
Okay.
it comes to our requirement and policy of a 10%?
So your unassigned fund balance really allows you the opportunity to access it and spend it as you choose. When you as a board assign dollars, it's restricted to the use that you assign it for. So for instance, your one-on-one technology, you assign that, that's all it can be used for. Your 10% fund balance says that you're going to keep a minimum amount of money in your account, and it's not available to use for any reason unless it's an emergency, and you approve that. So when you look at this unassigned fund balance of $4 million, it truly says this is the money that's available to us for other discretionary spending. The state accounting manual actually sets these titles. So you don't have a lot of latitude to change it, but you can add, so you could add a designated fund amount for any other purpose. So for facilities. So if you said we want to put 2% a year away for facility repair and designate it, you can have a sub-account that will show up on your balance statement. Does that help answer your question?
It does, but could you actually answer what our current assigned, what is currently assigned? Is it just technology in that?
Yes.
In that fund balance?
Yes.
So technologies are currently our only encumbrance that's assigned, that we've said we want to have money in there?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Then, okay, so that's the unassigned fund balance, but what's the unassigned to minimum fund balance? What's the difference?
So that's your
between those two?
10%. That's your
Okay.
10%.
Can't go below that based on
General
policy.
Ledger 891. And
Okay.
if you look at your total expenditures of 61,116,000, that 891 is 10%.
Okay.
So each year, as your expenditures increase, so does that minimum 10%.
And just for the board, we'll talk about it in the next meeting, but the verbiage has been changed from expenditures to 10% of budgeted revenue. So a little change in verbiage there, which would change that number by 100,000 or something like that.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Well,
Okay.
it hasn't been adopted.
Because it's not a policy yet.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's not a
okay.
policy yet, so it doesn't affect this. It's really for us in the future if the board approves it.
So in essence, what you're saying, Rob, is if we approved it, instead of the 61,116,000, it'd be the 62,294,000.
Maybe 10% of that, yeah.
Right, is
So it
what
wouldn't have
we're
a huge
referring
effect
to. Right.
on that, but it would have some.
Okay.
So one thing for you to consider as you make that move, when you approve your budget, you approve an appropriation level. So when you approve the budget tonight at the amount that's requested, the district by law cannot exceed that number in its spending. So that's set. There is no, if you get more revenue, it isn't affecting how you adopted the budget. So if you do decide to do the minimum fund balance based on revenue, you're going to have a procedure or a process in place so that if your revenue exceeds what is budgeted, how the mechanism is going to be to update that designated balance.
Would you say that's also true if your expenditures were lower than what you budgeted? It would also affect
Your
the
appropriation level is the maximum that you can spend. So you've just got to make sure that you have a mechanism for compliance in your policy. That's all I'm saying, is it makes it a moving target.
Well, if it's stated the budgeted revenue, then it's not a moving target. If it's
Correct.
actual revenue or expenditure, then it's a moving target.
Correct.
So I think it's important to have the word budgeted.
Okay.
to-
But remember, your revenue may come in lower.
Right.
So,
No, I'm aware. That's why.
yeah, you just,
Wouldn't hold us accountable for something we can't foresee. I
and
think right now
accommodate.
it does.
You just want to be careful that you don't make it so restrictive that the district can't operate. Because if your revenue is less, you just want to make sure that administration can address needs as they come before
Yeah.
the district.
One of the terms we use is without board approval, so I think that one covers it. Board has the opportunity to approve. But that's a discussion that'll happen next meeting, so.
Yep.
Okay, anything else from the board? We have, if there's no more questions, we have a little bit of time. If there's been anything that came up from the public in the audience that would like to make a comment, then we'll give that opportunity. If not, then we can adjourn this meeting. If everyone's comfortable with it.
Hold on, you have that we're
do an
self-assessing this
assessment.
meeting.
Oh, my goodness.
Which I'm not quite sure we want to self-assess a special. You guys had this discussion the other day. I don't know if
I
that's
think what came out of that
essential.
is that all meetings are all meetings, and so yes, we're now going to self-assess.
Okay. Thank you,
Jen.
Becky. That was awesome.
Thanks, Becky. Can't believe I forgot that. Looks like we're in. So the agenda was well planned to focus on the real work of the board. 5 answered commendable. The board followed its agenda and did not allow itself to get sidetracked. 5 answered commendable. The board's deliberations and decision-making processes were public. 5 answered commendable. All board members participated in discussion. No one dominated. 1 satisfactory, 2 good, 2 commendable. Members listened attentively, avoiding side conversations. 5 said commendable. Board actions occur at a policy level rather than an operational level. 4 said yes, 1 said not applicable. I first marked not applicable with that, and then I'm reminded that discussions are actions. Voted on actions are final actions. So the way that's written, even our discussions are considered actions. So the board agenda referenced policy about each topic that was discussed. 5 said yes. If additional policies were proposed, the board started with a broad statement and became more detailed in a logical and disciplined sequence. 5 answered not applicable. The board chair helped the board efficiently conduct its meeting. 5 said yes. And the board supported the superintendent in any reasonable interpretation of its policies. 3 said yes. 2 said not applicable. So we had a conversation on this last meeting. And Tony convinced me, so I voted yes this time. And the reason I voted yes is just so you know, maybe this discussion can come up again. The interpretation of the policy that we wanted the budget to be in a simple format is what was discussed. We really went over that today, so I chose yes because Dr. Hurst made sure that happened for us. So that was my reasoning. Does anyone want to add or they disagree with that? Tony, if you mark not applicable this time.
I marked non-applicable.
Oh,
but I
my
do
goodness.
Oh, my gosh.
So did I convince you?
You have a great point.
All right. Okay. Was there any comments? I don't see any comments on there. Okay. So overall weighted average, 1 said good and 4 said commendable for 4.8. So well done, board. It was a good meeting. And with that, our business is complete. Meeting adjourned.